Carl Evans, please give him a round of applause, award-winning lawyer who will be talking about legal consequences and regulation in cryptocurrencies. You'll need this.
Thank you kindly.
Of course.
Shall I use the microphone there?
Yeah.
Okay, checking that works.
Let's try and liven things up a bit, shall we? Law isn't the most exciting thing to talk about. So we'll try and get this a little bit more entertaining. So, let's get some engagement. How is everybody? Are we good? Come on, make some noise. How is everybody? Okay, there we go. All right. Are you at a tech conference or a funeral? Let's make it exciting. So, okay, look, let's talk about legal consequences and regulations in crypto. Yeah, I know, that was kind of anticlimactic, wasn't it, right? So, look, a little bit about me. I'm the managing associate of Gresham International. I'm an international lawyer. For those of you who don't know me, this is pretty much my bio. For those of you who do know me, keep quiet. I'm an international lawyer. I wrote a book, The Little Book of Crypto, in 2019. If you're ever very bored, buy it. I write in industry publications. I'm a crypto patent holder. I speak. I do a bunch of stuff in the industry. It's all very interesting, but the tagline is, I believe in crypto. I'm a degen at heart, and I love all of this. I do also have a gaming background. I'm a not secret tech geek. I game, we sponsor, and I sponsor esports teams. So I like to explain to people that there's a little bit more than just your average lawyer working there. I also worked with the first company that went public in Europe that was an esports company, and do a bunch of other stuff related to that industry. So first thing, with every speech, small amount of housekeeping. I am a lawyer, but I am not your lawyer. So that means anything I talk about on stage is not legal advice, not tax advice, not financial advice. See what I'm doing there? See the lawyering thing I'm doing? And I split my time between a number of different countries. So my accent is predominantly British, but like with most lawyers, my brain doesn't always think before my mouth goes. So if I'm speaking too fast, so you can raise your hand and say, Cal, slow it down. I don't understand what you're saying. That's okay. Right, let's talk laws. Okay. Regulations in crypto. Good versus bad, emotions versus logic. This is really the four things we look at. If I was talking finance, I would talk about the risk-reward model. But here I'm going to talk about good, bad, emotions versus logic. If you meet degens, pure degens, they believe that regulation is a bad thing. We should be able to freely trade however we want. If you kind of compare that to people that think logically, they say, well, this isn't the Wild West, things aren't crazy, and actually we do need rules and regulations to keep us all nice and safe. Which, by the way, is not something I'm sure you guys have discovered on your roads yet, because I went for a drive last night and that was crazy, so I love that for this city. That's amazing. Okay, look, what do we think about in terms of law? Well, we think about it in terms of two elements, right? Anything you guys do legally, you think about it two ways. You think in terms of regulators, and you think in terms of third parties. That's really all you're thinking about. Am I going to keep the regulators, the government, or is anybody going to sue me, or is there a risk factor from it? So everything you do legally comes from these two things. If it doesn't come from one of those two things, you're not obligated to do it. You're not obligated to protect yourself, and you're not obligated to follow the rules that the regulators find out, right? And that's where we develop this gray area. It's where people come up with the idea, right, that actually there's no rules around it, so I'm not obligated to keep a regulator happy, and there's no chance that I'm going to get sued, so it's... let's manage that. But look, what's the point of rules and regulations? In order to talk about it fully, you've got to know why they exist. Many people miss this point. Whenever we talk about, hey, these laws are here, they think it's just to stifle innovation or kill the crypto industry or stop people from becoming millionaires or, pick your conspiracy theory here. It's really about the protection of three different groups. It's about protection of people, it's about protection of companies, and it's about protection of the state. They protect you, they protect commerce, and they protect the country. And the regulator and the legislature manages each of these individually. Really, it's a game of economics, freedom versus control, right? I want to be able to do what I should be allowed to do. I'm an independent person. In a free market economy, I can do what I want. and there are rules based around that. So there's an impact of it, right? Patchwork of legal views, rules, requirements, and the regulators in this particular industry are having to work from the ground up. So let's pause and think about something for a second. Unlike any other industry we've seen before, there are some very cool things happening here. And this is where you notice the difference in lawyers, and this is where you notice the difference in the industry. There is a patchwork of legal views, rules, and requirements. Yeah, sure. We see that with some things internationally, but there's generally a standardized set of rules, right? If I work in finance, I know that there's rules against certain types of trading all over the world. In fact, governments work very close to deal with that. If you fly on an aeroplane, there are rules around how aeroplanes are designed to work and what happens from everything between how you check in to if there's a delay or there's a luggage. Those rules are pretty standard over the globe. But here we are in an industry where there isn't a set of standardized rules. There is a huge patchwork of legal rules, views, and requirements. And this is because regulators are having to work from the ground up. And if we think about it in terms of how laws are typically made, we decide that something is wrong or it shouldn't happen or it should happen. The government kind of gets a feel for it, becomes a political issue. It's voted on, and then it becomes a law. But here's something different happened. This was all created, and the regulators are having to catch up. So they're having to learn from us. And that's why when you speak to a lot of people in this industry, including the two panels that we've already heard from this morning, they talk about, well, we helped this government, and we spoke with these guys, and we're building this out for these guys. With a lot of other things that never really happened. Sure, there was consultation, but nobody actually came along and said, hey, we need help with this. And for example, with us, when we worked with Lebanon, when we worked with Paraguay, when we worked with Estonia, the genuine conversation began with a bunch of, honestly, old people going, we don't know what this is. What do we do? And that was really interesting to see. So then it comes into a moral dilemma, right? Freedoms versus constraints. We know that crypto opens the door for a lot of very cool things. We know that DeFi opens even more doors for a lot of even cooler things. But we have this freedoms versus constraints things. And so what we do is we kind of press this because the bigger question comes in, has the bigger problem with fiat been discovered? Now let's pause and think about that for a second. Everything we do is based around the concept of money. I get it. People have love, emotions, wants, needs, everything. But really, the reason you get up in the morning and go to work is for money. And now we've introduced a system which says, actually, that money that you might be using, we could have created something else. Those banks that hold that money and facilitate those transactions between parties, we could do that ourselves. And that begins to scare a lot of people at various different levels. So it has consequences, right? Consequences from our side and consequences from their side. First consequences are arbitration in a legal sense. For those of you who don't know what arbitration is, it's basically picking the best of something from a different location. Let's talk about why we are in Georgia, why we're here. Because Georgia's developing a framework, because it has a great taxation protocol for corporations, because it offers citizenship through investment, because it has fantastic food, fantastic wine. But actually, people are looking at countries that they never looked at before because of legal frameworks. Because why would I set up my company in the United Kingdom, where I'm originally from, pay 20% corporate tax, have to charge VAT, have to publicly disclose my directors and my shareholders, be subject to corporate annual returns, be subject to tax filings, and so on and so on, when I can go to 25 other countries and have absolutely none of that. And, by the way, those countries also have a specific license around what I'm trying to achieve, which is pretty cool. So we have a growth of a whole new industry. And it really shows how governments react. People talk about government reaction. How does a government react to something? And actually, as a comparable point, people talk about COVID. Who remembers that? It's crazy. You can see how a government reacts to a situation. And make no mistake, When you introduce a new financial instrument or a new way of trading commodities or a new way of engaging in the financial world that disrupts the current system that they have spent the last 200 years building, it creates a situation that they need to react to. And if you ever dealt that, just look at some of the restrictive laws in some of the countries, such as North Korea. Anybody ever think of them when they're dealing crypto? No? 60% of the world's hacks come from North Korea. The North Korean nuclear missile program is financed through crypto. Anybody ever think of that? And so this creates a situation that governments have to react to. And so we have a race. We call it the embrace versus hate, right? My country loves crypto. We've got licenses. We've got a framework. My country hates it. They'll put you in jail. And there is no rhyme or reason to that, by the way. It has nothing to do with how strong the economy of the country is, with how responsive their citizens are. You could draw difference and comparisons between South Africa, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Geopolitics, economics, everything, it doesn't matter. Direct democracy, republic, democracy, they all have different views on this. Why? It's not because they care about the fact that you're sending $600 to your friend or you're sending £25 to somebody over a decentralized ledger. That's not the issue. The issue is it's disruptive. That's why they are reacting in different ways. And so we have laws that are rushed. One of the things you learn as a lawyer in the UK as you go through training, for those of you who have ever been unfortunate enough to do that, I'm still seeing a therapist about it. If anybody's interested, I'll give you their number. You learn that there's something called the Dangerous Dogs Act. And it's the prime example of what happens when a law is rushed. There was a law in the 1960s that said if you walked a dog on the street, it had to have a muzzle. Muzzle, for those of you who don't speak very good English or it's a second language, is the thing that covers the dog's mouth. Because there had been a spate of dogs biting people. And they rushed it through. They rushed it through in 2 weeks. It was one of the fastest laws that had ever been passed because people had been bitten. Children had been attacked. And so you had these tiny dogs that were, walking around. And if you walked out in public with a dog that didn't have a muzzle on it, you got a fine. And it was crazy. And what it was pointless. And we see this a lot in the crypto industry. We see this a lot in the DeFi world. Laws are rushed. And for those countries that aren't necessarily rushing laws, there's something else happening. Regulators are cashing in. I love this as a topic of conversation that very few people want to talk about. Why do we think, as an example, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission undertakes so many enforcement actions against the top 10% of crypto firms? Hands up, all those of you who think it's to protect the citizens of the United States. Get out. No, I'm joking. It's not. It's because, like with every government-regulated entity or government enforcement body, they have a budget. And that budget only goes so far. And regardless of what people think of politicians, who are all very decent people who do their job for absolutely nothing other than the meager pay they make, they want to spend above their budget. And they can go out and they can issue ridiculous fines against companies without actually giving them a lot of information about what rules they're supposed to have broken. And it's free money for them. Has anybody ever heard of the Victims Restitution Fund from the Securities and Exchange Commission? Yeah, that's right. That's because it doesn't exist. If they were really protecting citizens, they would give some of that money back to people that were damaged, right? No. They go and get their cash, and then they say to you, well, you can go through the civil courts and go and get money if you think you can get it. Best of luck with that. Doesn't really sound like they're looking after people, does it? So they're cashing in. And what this does is this shows weaknesses and strengths in the laws that are being made and how regulators are acting. And that's why we start with this arbitrage, legally. You go somewhere where people like you. You go somewhere people do business with you. And let's be real, much like where you choose to drink And as a Brit, we have something called pubs, and you choose what pub you go to drink. Contrary to popular belief, we don't just drink tea, we do also drink other things. You go to a pub and you pick that pub based on the things you like, the price they charge, the people you know, how friendly it is. And today we're seeing that in this industry. And that's a really cool consequence. So what do you do if you're thinking, well, I'm in the crypto space and I'd like to stay safe and I have a couple of questions and I'm not really too sure. And all right, these are my top tips. This is the same thing I say to everybody. Well, what do you do? This is the first thing I say to everybody, and we can do a little back and forth here. If you have a problem with your teeth, who do you go to? Dentist, correct. 5 points for Gryffindor. If you have a problem with your car, who do you go to? Mechanic. Wow, you guys are really, come on, it's Saturday morning, let's go. If you have a legal problem, who do you go to? I love you. Thank you. I didn't even pay him to say that. He just said that. Yes, you use a lawyer. The amount of people that I meet in this industry that say, well, you know, we have a compliance officer, or we kind of worked with this guy, and we kind of did that. That's terrifying. I mean, that's really terrifying. You want to go out and build a multi-million-dollar business in a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and you're not even going to pick up the phone to a lawyer? I'd probably start asking questions about your management style, if I'm honest. And what do you not do? Okay, there is an English expression, and I have no idea if this happens anywhere else in the world, but mothers say to their sons, and I guess their daughters in the UK, if your friends jump off a cliff, would you jump off the cliff? Meaning, if your friends do something stupid, are you going to do it? The answer is often yes, by the way. But we see this all the time in the crypto industry. Those guys did it. Well, we're going to do it. Those guys are huge and they haven't got in trouble. We're going to do it. Doesn't work like that. Just because they haven't got caught or they haven't got in trouble or there hasn't been issues doesn't mean it's not coming. Doesn't mean that their model will work for you. And we see this all the time. The amount of conversations that I have with potential clients in the first phone call, yeah, we're copying this company's model. Oh, but these guys do it, and they're decentralized. And how can we get caught if we're decentralized? And there's this whole ethos of these guys do it, so we should do it. No. Ignore that. Be 2023, not 1923. This is hugely important. Stop thinking like old school business owners. Stop thinking like old school founders. You're not confined to one city. You're not confined to one set of rules. You've got the ability to go anywhere in the world. I was literally just having a conversation with guys in the lobby who are moving their company from the UK to here. Why? Because of all the stuff we just spoke about. Think more 2023. And focus. This is one of those industries where people love to lose focus. If we go back to a lot of token launches or we look at projects and people go, we're building an exchange and we're building a wallet and we're building this and we're building that. And then they go through their raise and then they're like, and now we're going to do this and now we're going to do... Each one of those presents a different regulatory challenge. Each one of those presents a different legal issue. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution. You do not get to be good in this and then pray that you're good in this. Doesn't work like that. You have to stay focused on what you're doing and what you're building. If you try and do everything, you will achieve nothing. God, I sound like my dad, don't I? For those of you who knew my dad, that sounded so much like him. And stay up to date with what's happening. Make sure that you stay on top of the latest information. The amount of people who have bad information or no information is kind of scary, is really scary. It's actually mind-blowing to see. So look, regulation, real, this is a quick thing, quick final points that we talk about. Freedom versus economics, free trade. Do we want rules? Yeah, we do. Why? Because we don't live in a completely anarchic society. People don't just get to do what they want to do. We have to live within the bounds of rules. Secondly, in the DeFi world, can the rules be enforced? Yes, they can. And the amount of people who think we are DeFi, we will not have anybody come and get us, they will come and get you. I promise you, they will come and get you. We're seeing some cool stuff. If neither of these work, so let's say, for example, we want the rules to be enforced, we do want rules, but we kind of want to make our own, well, there's new countries. Vit from Lieberland is speaking here. Or there's virtual countries. Or for the first time I have ever heard of this, American Indian tribes are setting up companies, specifically for crypto. So you pick your own place, and if you can't find it, you make your own. And this creates a new power structure. We call it the machine, right? Companies versus governments. A couple of guys have mentioned big company names. We talk about Facebook, we talk about Google, we talk about this, we talk about that. Forget them. Why do I say forget them? Because they work with the government. They work for the government. Let's be real, okay? You can't be that big without having some kind of government-led interference or leverage or pressure or whatever. When you build what you build, you need to decide early on. Are you in or are you out of the system? Are you with it or are you out of the machine? That's when all of these decisions become important, right? And so I hope that's given you guys a very good overview.